Welcome to Life Happens, where Texans come to protect their legacy and prepare for the second half of life. Join your host, attorney Kim Hegwood with Hegwood Law Group, and our weekly guest as we navigate the challenges that emerge as life happens. Now here's your host, Kim Hegwood.
Good morning. Welcome to Life Happens with me, Kim Hegwood, and our very special guest today, Ann Garcia. Good morning, Ann. How are you?
Good morning, Kim. I'm doing pretty good over here. How are you?
So far, so good. I have no complaints on this end. And so I tell most people I've been very blessed. So I'm grateful for every day.
Oh, yes. Every day's a blessing. That's for sure.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about assisted livings today with you. And you have a company called ComForCare, correct?
That is correct.
And we're going to talk about why you may want a small assisted living, maybe your best option. In my head, I already think I know some of those answers, but we're going to kind of let our listeners get some good information from you. And so let's start off with, what is a small assisted living facility and how do they differ from larger facilities or nursing homes? So what does it mean to be in a small assisted living facility?
So, first of all, I want to start with bigger is not always better. I know in Texas, it's always everything is big in Texas. So, it's just very, very, very Texas saying. But in the assisted living industry, bigger is not always better. A small assisted living facility is classified in the state as 16 beds or 16 residents or less. You are considered a small assisted living facility. And if you have more than 16 beds or 16 residents in one facility, that is a larger or bigger facility considered. Most of the time when a resident starts showing symptoms or concern, the family becomes concerned about mom and dad's living situation, they opt to go to a bigger facility, which is great, because most of the time the bigger facilities really have the amenities and a lot of activities, a lot of programs that would help the transition or would really is very beneficial for the resident. And then other times, the situation of the resident or the client is not appropriate for that setting. So there are different kinds of qualifications or situations that a certain resident would benefit being in a bigger facility, and there are certain types of situations or I want to say conditions where a resident is appropriate in a smaller type of facility. I know you asked me about when they are appropriate to be in a bigger or in a smaller facility. And I want to say most of the time, and if you're listening right now, I'm pretty sure you are interested in this. You may be a family member, you may be a son, a daughter, or a friend, or a spouse, considering, which one is better. It's funny because I actually made a video on my website about saying, don't come to ComForCare. It's not for everyone. Even if I know a lot of people have heard a lot of good things about us, it is not for everyone. And if you want to know more, go check out my website. It's there. But yeah, so if you are needing a lot, if the condition, that is why it is important for the resident, for the potential resident to get evaluated, is because by either a nurse, a certain employee that is trained or skilled to properly guide the family member who is in distress right now because mom and dad has to be, moved or transferred. It's really very important to kind of guide them what type of facility is appropriate. So for me, if you are needing a lot of care, if you are needing higher level of care, a lot of medical, let's say, attention, a smaller assisted living facility that preferably has a nurse that rounds or is owned by a nurse like mine is an advantage because there is that medical focus. You consider that, not just the care. Of course, the care is important, but also the medical part of it, because that's what will help actually give the resident the full benefit. It's not just the care is important, but also if you have that medical knowledge and experience, that's the way to go. In bigger facilities, they have that, but again, they have a lot of residents. So the caregiver to resident ratio is more. And so, I want to say the attention, the care, the focus is not as much as when you are in a smaller facility. For example, I have a 10-bed facility, and with a 10-bed facility, I have two caregivers on site during the day. So the ratio is one caregiver is to five. Considering we're full, one caregiver is to five residents. That's a lot of difference between when you're in a bigger facility, when one caregiver is to 15 or 20 residents. Where's the care there? Where's the attention? Where is the personalized connection? Sadly, it's not there. But that is, if mom and dad is still active, if they still are requiring a lot of activities, if they're benefiting from that, if they have friends in there, they're social, they love to go bingo, they love to exercise, it helps them feel more alive, then that is the best facility for mom and dad, until they get to a point that is not beneficial anymore. And that's when you start considering a smaller assisted living. Now, I do have some residents that are more active and just oriented as well. They don't have to be fully demented or have advanced dementia to come to a smaller facility. But these are the type of residents that actually knows what they want. They want the care. For them, they're not social. They don't care about that. It's not important to them. The family, they know mom and dad. They're not really very social. They want to be in their room left alone, but they want to be able to sleep at night. They want to know that mom and dad are taken care for. So that's why they come to me. And again, I have to evaluate. I have to make sure that when we accept this resident, when we take them in, that we will be able to provide the best care and help this resident, all throughout the journey. So that's the difference.
So when someone needs a lot of care, is a small facility the best option?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. There is more focused attention, and, it's smaller. So the caregivers are actually right I always say it's a 360. The caregivers, they can walk around the hall, the little living room, and see Mr. Smith, Mrs. Smith. Oh, Mr. George is not looking like Mr. George. They can get that right away, address that right away, and we can attend to that as a nurse.
So what kind of care needs are you able to provide in your facilities?
So we have actually a lot of residents that have higher level of care needs when they need 1 to 2 person assist. We have trained caregivers for that. When they have a PEG tube, which is not a lot of families. Not a lot of facilities accept those kind of residents. We have residents that has insulin needs daily or as needed. We have those because we have a nurse that rounds certain times a week, about three to 4 times a week, and a 24-hour nurse on call. So yeah, the more care that a resident needs, we are able to actually provide those care as needed, of course, depending on what the goals of the families are. But we have higher level care residents for the most part.
So in your facilities, does home health care and hospice care also for your residents?
Yes, of course. We like to work with a team. We collaborate with them. We team up with them. We communicate with them. And we like to provide all the best resources that our residents are eligible, for their comfort, for their care. and having such companies work with us on providing all of that to our residents it's just beneficial for them. So yes, we work with home health and hospice companies most of the time, and we love them.
So I heard you mention that, that you just spoke earlier about how important, or that you have a nurse on call. How important is that, for a facility to have?
It is very important. I can't imagine having an assisted living facility and not have a nurse on call. It doesn't have to be on site, but at least on call 24/7. Because for me, it's when the staff knows that if something happens and they're not comfortable and something wrong is going on, they know that somebody's going to pick up. There's someone out there looking out on their phone and can pick it up and help with the situation. There are a lot of times that has happened, and the caregivers are great. They do good work, but they have limitations. For example, if there is a resident that all of a sudden has a stroke-like symptom, it's overwhelming, and you have to know what kind of situation you're dealing with. So caregivers are not medical. When you have a nurse, you call the nurse immediately will drive or go to the site and guide the caregivers and kind of tell them what to do, prepare them, put the patient on the bed, put oxygen on, do whatever it takes for the comfort of the resident. Or if it's really an emergency, call 911 and I'll be right there. They have that support. And also, how many times has this happened where the situation really didn't need any hospitalization, but that decision was made by a nurse? So, hospitalization is stressful. Nobody wants to go to the hospital. And not everybody needs to be hospital. I worked at the bedside for 10 years, and I worked at the ER, the ICU, the floor. A lot of times there are patients there that doesn't need to be there. It was just a false alarm or something, but that's okay. That really is okay. That's why they go there, to get evaluated. But can you imagine all the stress that everybody, not just the patient, the family member, everybody has to go through for that to happen? So at my facility, we have a nurse on call, and that nurse will go and evaluate and decide, make that judgment. Does these need to be hospitalized, or is this something we can address while the patient is in the facility? And that saves us a lot of time, energy, resources. Of course, we notify the family and we get with them and see what they want to do and kind of advise them. So there's that accountability and medical knowledge and experience, that personnel that is readily available to help.
So I have to ask before we get off, what made you decide to go this route?
It's always been my passion. Growing up, I saw my mom take care of my grandmother in our home way back in the Philippines. And even my dad's mother, her mother-in-law, she took care of her, even if she was in a different location, different city. But she made sure that she always had caregivers, good caregivers, and would go check on her all the time. That's always been, I grew up with that kind of approach. And so I've just inherited that, I guess. I grew up with that kind of love, and being a nurse, doing bedside. I saw a lot of elderly that didn't need to be there, and, things that could have been prevented if they had the right knowledge and resources. And, I'm not saying falls are not going to happen. It will happen, but it could have been, things could have been prevented, or, there's a lot there's a need for it. Honestly, there is a need. And when I saw that need, and my passion is there, I said, why not do it? Why not give myself a chance? And here I am with 4 facilities, just rocking it.
Living the dream, girl, living the dream, right?
Yeah.
So how would someone find you if they're interested in one of your facilities?
A lot of the clients that I get are either word of mouth. And so they can go to my website as well, ComForCare Assisted Living. My number is there. My email is there on the board. How else can they find me? I'm everywhere. I'm in social media. That's the way to go right now. I make videos over there, just a lot of fun, cool videos about some of the residents, of course, being mindful about the HIPAA. But it's cool. Sometimes they want to see that, and yeah, I like to talk about what I do, and so I share it everywhere, and I'm everywhere. You'll find me everywhere.
Well, I just want to thank you so much for being on the show today, and it's been a pleasure. And I look forward to visiting one of your facilities.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Kim. Thank you so much for having me here. I appreciate it.
Not a problem. I've enjoyed it immensely. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Life Happens with Kim Hegwood. Be sure to tune in every Thursday at 10 a.m. wherever you listen to your podcast as we navigate through the challenges that emerge as life happens. The content of this podcast does not establish an attorney-client relationship or constitute attorney-client privilege, legal, medical, financial, or any other professional advice.